Hello and welcome back to another chapter, another edition of Bad Hat, and today we'll be talking about a linkage or potential connectivity between enlightenment and the super rich. And in my personal case, I will be referring to my experience with the Russian oligarchs and people who are, the part of the Russian elite, because I don't know much about the super rich, say, in other countries. I can only say that I'm going to explore if there's any linkage whatsoever between being enlightened, as you know, is one of the ongoing theme in the Western press, in the Western media, about how they expect, our leaders, our business leaders, to be enlightened, to demonstrate that moral leadership that was so much talked about, so much hype at the World Economic Forum, how they were expecting the super rich to step up to the plate and become the sort of like the moral leaders of today on the back of the ongoing COVID crisis. So let's look back at about 10 years of what was happening in Russia with those super rich that wanted to be seen or perceived as someone that were enlightened or conscious, and now the same hype is catching up with Russian businessmen who really want to be seen as conscious business people, just like in the West, this recent fad. And when I was with a joint venture of BP called 10K BP, a lot of you, not a lot of you, now these days, few of you may remember of that bloody corporate feud that raged on at the time between BP and 10K. Now it's all gone, but at the time, the owners of the 10K BP that owned 50% and then sold that asset to the state-owned company in Russia, such oligarchs like Michael Friedman and German Han that normally covered quite a bit, even in the Western press these days, they started having this pilgrimage across the Arava Desert in the southern of Israel, where every year they would want to celebrate the Jewish Passover by crossing the desert. It would take probably about 4 days, living simple, travel simple, camelback, and sleeping in tents, and sometimes getting caught up in the sandstorm. All of that seemed to celebrate the exodus of Jews from Egypt, and meant to enhance the general perception of those oligarchs as being at least pious, because you may see that few super rich these days really want to be seen as the active, woke CEOs or business leaders, because a single misstep can cause a lot of grief and potential damage to their reputation. So in Russia, yes, so those were the super rich Russian Jews that really wanted to demonstrate their pious and religious commitment to honor old traditions of Jewish history. And then, there were mainly more plain esoteric practices professed by some super rich. And what it brings to mind, the one who was covered quite a bit by the Russian edition of the Forbes magazine, like Nikolai Tsvetkov, the owner of the Uralsib, an empire which was valued at some point back in 2007 at a staggering $8 billion. And then by the year 2014, it went down to $170 million, which was quite a drop. And of course, the Russian Forbes, which covered his love for anything esoteric, which again on the surface were seemingly innocuous, like yoga, fasting, healthy food, and basically honoring some ancient studies and stuff. Again, it stands to reason that if you try to compare the fact that somebody who wanted to be enlightened by the time they became super rich, that precipitated their fall. It's almost like, okay, if you're rich, embrace the lower energies of money and kind of stay there. Just don't try to climb up and claim to be conscious. Well, same thing that befell the founder of the conscious capitalism, like John Mackey, followed and dogged by various scandals, and by the time that he sold his empire, his Whole Foods to Amazon, then this whole thing was completely out of hand, and very little stayed that could remind us of the original principles of the conscious capitalism. So it does seem like the super rich, or people who really wanted to be perceived by the general public as being enlightened, they kind of fall on the same sword, this way or another. And well, in Russia, if you look at not only oligarchs, but at some point there was a desire to supercharge the Russian public servants by encouraging them to pay pilgrimage to the Mount of Athos in Greece, that island, and even the Athos Brotherhood was set up to encourage dignitaries to pay visits there and seek some enlightenment within the context of the Orthodox Church. And at the time, I actually did work with some of the people who were among those encouraged to move, to go there for a week or so. And we did work, and they did share with me that they did experience some sensations, like a bodily sensation that led to their perception of being lightheaded or almost enlightened. And then they did say that some of the people who were prone to embrace, as we know now, this concept of a power, place of power, and that caused them to become extra religious. When they came back, they became like avid Christians and so forth. So, but these are all extremes. I would probably give you an example of a healthy practice, when mid-level managers would team up and go and visit some well-known places of power in Russia, like in Altai, or there are plenty of those trips organized for managers seeking some enlightenment and who would try to self-reflect on things and their potential and look for ways to improve their career prospects. So that, to me, is more or less a healthy way of a pastime, when they would travel to those places of power and come back with things that actually, in most cases, deeply change their own perception of how they should be working and treating other people. And most of them would become, healthier individuals, and especially better managers, or at least in that part dealing with people. I don't know much about finances, whether it actually helped them harness the power of money. But there are certain things that help them improve their relations with people and subordinates and direct reports. And one thing, just going back again to this Athos Brotherhood, which normally is not covered so much in the Russian press anymore. But this year, our Prime Minister Mishustin did pay a visit there, which again brings to mind, this whole concept behind it, because we all know that so much is talked about, and especially for some of the media figures like Professor Solovey, who talks about black magic rituals that are practiced by the Russian elites, and he actually is making a big point about it, even with a nod to our president, and going as much as saying that all the super rich and the Russian elite, this way or another, they are, they practice the black magic rituals just to protect their ill-gotten gains or whatever, So that would probably sound, close to something we hear about in the West, like in the U.S. when you're talking about the super rich that are somehow related to some satanic cults. And that is also, involved with a fair number of people from the media and the world of entertainment. So I'm not trying to say that this is actually, as a matter of fact, something that's going on. I'm just saying that at a certain level of the super rich, you kind of lose the perception of these people would profess some values-based practices to make their empires look a bit healthier in the eyes of the general populace. So we don't see that at all. Or there are certain stories that are spun, but you don't really believe them. I would probably say that maybe mid-size, enterprises and mid-level managers, they are better poised to embrace some healthy practices. I mean, I would not call that very healthy as to travel to a place of power, maybe spend a day or two there, but I have spoken with people who made such trips, and I saw that profound change in them. So I would say, anything in moderation, is probably good, as long as the person, who is looking to embrace some esoteric practices that are like nature related. I think that's probably the healthiest approach of all. So I would like to say here that the level of enlightenment professed or spun, and certain practices that are, that are kind of, I would not say widespread, but there are quite a few individuals who would do that. So I'd say the truth is somewhere in the middle, because apparently the higher you climb and you catch up with the powers that be and the powers that the influence and money bring, so apparently it kind of takes people away from anything healthy. So that way, apparently my view on this particular aspect of enlightenment and CEOs, since I worked with some CEOs and the C-suite who were moderately practicing certain rather healthy esoteric practices, I'd say that it's all a journey, and if they stay on their journey without trying anything exotic or anything like going overboard, I think that a lot of the people that are working with them, along with their families and staff, they would benefit from working for someone who is reasonably enlightened, and especially when it touches their relations with the, with their reports, direct reports or staff, and contributes to building and developing healthy fabric of their companies. So we'll cover it some more at some point, so stay tuned.